Hey everybody, it's Marty, the JavaScript party, and my buddy Rhett, and we got a nut for Rhett, and we're gonna give that to Rhett. Oh, she's waiting down there for it. You're waiting this time. There you go, girl. That's convenient. It's a lot easier to just hand it to her. So it is 8:12 in the morning. It's a beautiful Monday morning. It was 49 degrees Fahrenheit outside when I took the dogs out for a walk a few minutes ago. And we are at May 5th, Monday, May 5th. And everything is going really well. And it's absolutely beautiful here. It's cooler than usual, I think. It would be interesting to me to, it would be kind of fun to do maybe like a 1 minute captain's log sort of video every day, and then like next year on that same date, watch last year's captain's log sort of thing. I think that would be really, really informative. Like I could just tell myself, okay, so yeah, I wasn't able to mow over the weekend. I did mow a little bit last night because it's just so wet. Trimmed all the trees, did this, did that, blah, 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 and then see like on May 5th next year what happened, what we did, and what things were like, I think that would be fun. Maybe I'll start doing that. I think that would be pretty cool, actually. But anyways, so here we are, video 120. So one video a day. It's been 120 days. I think I took a weekend off for my birthday weekend. So, it's been going for, I think I'm confident I started this video series on the 1st. And I think this is pretty cool. I mean, we could have done a lot more cooler things. But I didn't. I just decided to try to really focus on, well, I know I've spent at least a month on just unit tests. So, that's like 20% of the time, probably more like 30% of the time. I know I probably spent a total of like 5 or 6 days on end-to-end testing. It'd be interesting to see, like, let's say I could manage to build this code, and in a year, I'm not like, at New Year's, I'm not like, all right, guys, I should have done this, I should have done that, let's restart from scratch again. Let's say it's like, okay, no, this is still good. This architecture is holding up. We're doing good. It'll be interesting to see if that sort of flips on its head. If the unit tests start to take less time and the end-to-end tests start taking more time. That wouldn't surprise me. So speaking of end-to-end tests, the thing I've been working on is like the tabbing, right? So like tab, tab, tab. And that's pretty cool. Like, so I like that. So let me just refresh, start all over again. And I also like the mouse behavior. And the mouse behavior, the tab behavior are two different things. And there are like sort of three things that you probably in 2030 will really need to be focused on. Right now there's kind of two things. There's the mouse interaction, which is what most people do. I guess there's four things. There's mobile. Like, so this doesn't exist in mobile, right? There's no mouse to go over. Your finger just clicks it. So in mobile, you don't get this little prompt. But in mobile, there's sort of a complete and utter culture of looking for these things. So that you're supposed to do that. There's mouse interaction like this. Then there's also the people who like to use the keyboard, and they just like using their keyboard. Those people are typically like a lot of people that work on laptops on planes, stuff like that. They'll prefer to use a keyboard to a mouse. It's just a little easier for them. Usually a lot of times you have like a little trackpad, and they disable that trackpad because it interrupts their things that they're working on and stuff like that. So those people generally demand that. And then there's the people who use screen readers, and that's a whole different group. And that is probably, I don't know, I've been saying this since like 2012 and been wrong the whole time, but we're probably right at the precipice of where that is going to become a huge thing, using screen readers. Although this seems like this would not be a tool for screen readers, because like generally people that use screen readers are blind, And, you know, this whole visualization, like, this would be completely pointless, I think, for a blind person. You know, like, you can't see any of the visualizations, because, and that's all they do is see stuff, you know. So I don't know, though. Maybe someday there'll be like some, like a braille thing where you can put your hand on and you'd be able to feel these things happening, which would be pretty cool. Like if it had little pins and you put your hand on it and then you could feel all these things happening. But and then like another thing that maybe, and we aren't really thinking about it, is like people in using like goggles, like virtual reality goggles. That's it. But anyway, so now for the keyboard people, we have done pretty good. Like you could click on that and you see exactly what is selected, and then when you click on this, like the rest of them aren't very well. You know, you can't really tell where you're at, and that's something we're gonna have to deal with. But, and like I said, most companies, they sort of deal with this sort of thing when they have to. That is so fascinating though, because it's circle now, but when I tab, let's go the other way around. I think it's a square. How effing weird is that? Yeah, that's really strange. But yeah, so if you tab all the way through and go back, it's a circle. If you tab all the way back, it's a square. Definitely a fascinating. It would be very fascinating to understand. That is a learning opportunity. I'll tell you that right there. Like whatever strange idiosyncrasies going on there is weird. But anyway, so I think one of the big arguments for not getting tabbing working early is usually that, and I've definitely seen this happen where you get the tabbing and all that working right early on, but then later on, as the application works, then the tabbing is super. As the application becomes more and more fleshed out, the tabbing gets really weird and wonky, because you know you're just not thinking about it all the time. And I think that's probably one of the where end-to-end testing is probably really shines. You know, like if you write an end-to-end test that tests the tabbing functionality, any issues probably will present themselves very quickly, if you do something to break the tabbing. I definitely don't. Oh, you know what it is here it's on the button. It tabbed on the button, and then there it tabbed on the icon. That is the difference. That is interesting. So I think what you probably want to do, I thought it was weird that you went all the way through and ended up back here again too. I think what you probably want to do is set the icon's tab index to 0. I think setting the tab index to 0 on the icon would have our, okay, that's viz, not menu. See, I bet you we're tabbed on this. Or maybe this button up here, whereas that other one is tabbed on the, and then so that brings up a different thing in that means that probably when we hit enter on that square, it probably wouldn't do anything because we're probably going to have the event happen there. So let's do this. Tab index is equal to 2. Was that what I did over there? Let's go back to this guy. Yeah. Boom. What? Wrong one. Okay, so that was actually supposed to be tab index. Oh, that'll be interesting to see what happens now. Let's hit reload. And then Yeah, so now it tabbed into the button. We probably don't want to be able to tab into the outer visualization. Okay, so I think that makes a little bit more sense. And then I think what we want to get rid of is this. And then I think we want to sort of lock in the fact that it's going to be tab, that this will always come before these. Oh my gosh. I get so confused when I'm dealing with these kinds of things. So we're going to set that to tab index 1. And this is a pretty simple layout situation. I mean, this is structurally very simple. So yeah, I think that's way better. So I think what would have happened before, had we not sort of adjusted, is when you hit enter, it would have been hitting enter on that top parent. And I would rather it hit, the event handler is going to be here, the thing that's going to open up the menu. So where are we at? 8:23. We got plenty of time. I guess it is time to start to actually build an event handler. So we want to basically have 2 events, one on click and one on enter. We want them to be the exact same. And this is where I think it really pays to have multiple lines, kind of the way I have it here. Because what we're going to want to do is we want to say like key. And I think we want to do the key up. Yeah, key up. And then I think that there's a way to only limit it to a specific. Okay, so show menu. And then I don't know why. I think it's just my rebellious nature, but I love to use alert in this situation. Now, alert is a very special, very, very unique piece of functionality. It's like a dinosaur. It's like an alligator or crocodile or something that exists, maybe a shark, from the early primitive days. And the one thing alert can do that I don't know if anything else in JavaScript can do is it actually stops the async cycle. So like literally JavaScript stops. So a lot of times if you want to see an actual value of something, you can console log it right before the alert and it won't update. So alert can be very, very helpful, but show the menu. Let's see, does this fix itself? Yes. It's weird. I think it's because I typed. Okay, so the key up fired. Now I think that there's like a way that you can limit it to just the enter. Okay. Angular. I can't believe they did. So I was watching the live stream, the Angular live stream last Friday, and somebody was just like, everyone gets confused between AngularJS and Angular. And are you guys going to do anything to address that? And they're like, ooh, this is kind of one of the things I think is sort of a huge personality issue, and most of us coders, we have a hard time sort of being very dismissive, and they were very, very dismissive about like that. And I think it's legitimate. Like, I think that they are legitimately, that is a legitimate issue. There are tons of AngularJS applications out there. It is extremely confusing. And then they were like, it's just like Java and JavaScript. And I feel like that's an even better argument for you guys doing something about it. And I think there's a very simple solution. Call it Angular TS. Let's just start calling it Angular TypeScript, because you can't do JavaScript in Angular. They tried that. At the very beginning, they were like, oh, you could do JS or TS. I've never, ever even heard of a JS implementation of Angular 2 plus. So I think Angular TS is the right thing, and I think it does send the right message. That I think originally they didn't want to call it Angular TypeScript because the idea was, oh, it won't just be for TypeScript, but it is just for TypeScript. Sorry guys, it's for TypeScript. That's the only thing it's ever going to be. And if they ever do add like a new flavor like Angular, and you can create py files instead of ts for Python or something, then they probably should rename that version. Like, instead of saying now we're in Angular 55, which by the way supports py files, they should just call that Angular py for Python, But anyways, Angular and I have binded an event to the key up. Is there a way for me to limit the binding to the enter button in the template? Yeah, see, that's what I thought. I thought you could just say dot enter. It just really, it surprised me that the IDE didn't help me here. Okay, so let's reload this. Let's put the tab up there, enter. Yep, okay, so that's good. And I believe that the enter button is the right button. So when I tab into an item, sometimes the space button is the correct button to open things into an element, and when the user tabs into an element, and the element's action is to open a menu. Is that typically tied to bound to the enter button, enter key, or to the, what's the other key? Space key. Oh, so both are expected. So yeah, that's what I thought. Space sometimes toggles or activates depending on enter usually selects or opens. Space sometimes toggles. Okay, so you want to do a space as well. And then I also want the click. Now, like I said, I'm just kind of doing this more for Well, first of all, I do think it'll make for cooler end-to-end testing. You know, like if you can use the keyboard to move around and do stuff. But I also want the practice. I do, like I said, I don't think this is going to be an ARIA friendly application. I think it would be like kind of like saying, oh, I want to make an ocean water thing, and I need to make it accessible to some sort of desert creature, you know, that never ever sees water, you know, or something, a cave thing that is for something like some bird that flies up around in the sky, you know. It's just like the whole concept of a 3D visualization sort of is, I don't think makes sense at this point in time for screen readers and stuff like that. I do think that that there are like other sorts of area kind of like disability issues that would be, that still like would be probably something that would be actually great for people with disabilities. Like I remember I saw this disability, this girl who, she can hold a pencil in her mouth. That's or like a pointer in her mouth, and she can click, and that's what she does. And I would imagine someone like that, where they're moving so slowly through the system, could probably build insanely incredible 3D things because they have a lot of brain cycles between behaviors, and if they happen to have a whole lot of time on their hands, maybe spending 5 hours building out some cool 3D thing makes a lot of sense. So this keyboard access is super, could be incredibly useful to someone like that. But for a blind person, it's just, I don't think there's any sort of use for it, at least at this point. Like I said, it would be kind of cool if there's like a braille kind of visual keyboard that maybe they could put their hand on and they could fill these sort of 3D things on that. That might be really, really neat. Although I don't, that would be, that's a whole interesting thing into itself. Like, how would you, like, most of the 3D things that we see here are just visual tricks that are designed to trick our body into thinking that it's 3D. But like, that's not going to work, I don't think, on a feeling thing. Like all these little visual tricks won't work, I don't think. They would actually have to be 3D. Anyways, I guess that's neither here nor there. So let's test our enter, space, and click. I guess click will be the easiest. So click is working, and then enter, and then space. So as you see, we get multiple, the alert, we do manage to call that on that. So now I want to, let's go to Angular material. Let's ask this thing. Okay, so is there an Angular material component that is typically designed to pop up from a vertical ellipse? I think it's 2 L's slash hamburger menu. What is going on, Daisy? What are you crying about? Map menu. Looks like map menu is our thing. And it looks like they like to run these things off of a trigger. And like I do think that the trigger is a really good way to do that, because it kind of keeps everything on the on, like, you know, it just makes it pretty simple to pop things up. The problem is like every effing time that I do that, at some point I need to like inform something or do some code behavior along with that. So so I would rather pop the menu up programmatically. In the TS. I remember back in like I want to say 1996, I worked at this place for this guy. He was a systems engineer. He was like, he was probably about my age. He was probably like 55, 60 years old, and I was like 30. I was like 28, 27, and emails had first come out, and he every time he would right click, he would add it to the dictionary instead of using the different value. Instead of applying the change, he would add it to the dictionary, and so then every email he sent out was just littered with spelling errors and stuff. It was funny, and he wasn't like born in the United States. His name was I mean, Lord, if he's still alive today, he is like 90 years old. So his name was Rudy Singh, and I remember he wasn't born in the U.S., but he'd been in the United States for like 35 years. But his spelling was off, and oh man, that was so funny. He actually almost got fired for that because he would just constantly send out emails with really bad spelling errors all through it. They like literally wrote him up 2 times for it, and if he did it one more time, they were actually going to fire him from a professional systems engineer job. That was interesting, and I remember he looked up his name. We all looked up our names on the internet and found like all these other instances of people. This was in 1996. All these other instances of people with our same name, and I remember he was absolutely convinced that these other people that were using his name were scammers, and they were trying to do something. They were up to something. It just cracked me up. Like in his mind, he would be a uniquely singular Rudy Singh in the United States. But anyways, yes. See, I don't think add a view child reference, right? So would I still need the map menu trigger? Click open menu. Okay, so yeah, I don't need that anymore. And I don't like that. I mean, I like it. I think it's great, but it's just like always ends up being a mistake. So, but it does look like I want to do this, and I think I'm going to end up with like a error because it's going to be like, I don't know what this is. Let's go ahead and get rid of this error here because we just don't have an edit. I know all we're going to have is an add for now, and we don't even need this second button. It is interesting that map menu item doesn't throw up an error, just map menu. It's a shame that at this point there's not enough information, and I do like to just hit save at this point, and only so I can copy this error, and then I think it's just faster. So okay, let me just show you how one way you could do this. You could go to Angular Material and go to the components and go to the mat menu. That's this guy. And then go to the API and copy that, and then come in here, and then I'm just out of pure habit, go in, add these spaces, and come over here, and then I generally like to put these like this, just because it can just be like unwieldy. And not only that, here is another place that you will quite often get conflicts. You know, like, you know, if you're working independently with other developers of each other, you're very likely to want to add stuff. So if this is all on one line here, you're you're likely to create a conflict that you just can't, and there's no workaround. I mean, you are kind of stuck with this. And so then you just have to wait for someone to get approved. And sort of like most places, so like most places are what you would call waterfall. They're like waterfall on the, when they're creating the requirements and stuff like that. Like they don't want to finish their requirements till they're done with all of them. Okay, so we figured out everything we want to do. Then they want to unleash all the requirements. Well, they almost always focus on the same sort of functionality for all their requirements, so they release them all at one time. And then they like to divvy up the work amongst, they like to become agile all of a sudden, to divvy up all these small pieces of work to different developers. And then they don't want to test anything until it's all working. So what they'll be like, okay, we want to test all these different things. Oh, it all works. And then they try to commit it all. And then you have Git conflicts everywhere. And it's just a nightmare situation. So anyway, so we brought in this. It would have been faster just to copy this error, and it would have told us to do that. So now I think if I hit save, oh, I already did. Looks like we're back, baby. And we have our map menu, and by default, somehow it knows not to show it. I don't know why. I don't know why it knows that the map menu should be hidden. I think it also knows where to display it, but I don't know that for sure. So now what we want to do is we want to I don't know if that's gonna work. Menu trigger. Well, maybe we need that, because see, we're getting a child to menu trigger. Right now, the way I have it, I don't have a menu trigger. Here's this menu trigger 844. Okay, so do I have to use menu? Menu trigger. Maybe I have to use menu trigger. I guess that would make sense. Okay, I don't know. Okay, let's just do the menu trigger thing. Now, what I want to know, okay, first of all, let's just try this, see what happens when we click on it. See, so it just opens on its own. But I guess it does also, so I guess I can still like send out something. I still know that it was opened. And then, so let's, okay, alert. Now, at this point, I'll usually change this to console log. And I don't know if you noticed, but like, basically, like at some point we have to just stop doing every Like, okay, now let's test enter and see what enter does. Now let's test space and see what space does. Like, you just kind of have to move on from that because it will just take too long. It's just not reasonable to test everything every time. And I think that is one of the big arguments for not getting this working at the beginning. You know, not getting all the different iterations of ways to work. Okay, so I don't think it should say add. I think it should say add visualization or viz. Let's make viz our word. And then I think in their example they gave us, yeah, click. So we're back to click, just click, right? And like, see, it's just so easy to forget this, but we don't want to just do click. We want to do enter and space as well. A lot of people like adding that on to the front of things, and I think that's kind of a, maybe it's possibly a carryover from um, 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 jQuery, add visualization. So I don't want to like kind of tie it to events. Um, it's just like, hey, there's this on edit event. And we'll hit save and we'll get some complaints. Add visual. I'm wondering if it's, I guess I should add a void here. I'm wondering if it makes sense to if it makes sense to show, I don't even remember what I was going to say, void. Oh, I guess it makes sense to change this to viz. I think we're trying to move to viz and, over visualization. Add viz. Visualization, that word is just too long. It's just going to be problematic all throughout this whole thing, trying to fit things everywhere. Okay. I think I changed that to viz. And that was totally misspelled. I'm pretty sure it's viz with a S. One. Nice. All right, I guess that's good for today. I think we're pretty close. Maybe it makes sense to. It probably makes. Okay, so I guess the next thing is to like emit a signal, to tell the app, hey, or we could do an at output. I I kind of want to do a signal instead, like emit a signal from a service because I think they're trying to like modify the way output works. The Angular team is trying to modify the way output works so that it's. I don't think it's a signal right now. I believe when I was watching that Angular live stream, there's a guy. I was gonna say a character, a human, on there. Can't remember what his name is. But anyways, he was made it very very clear that output is not a signal. Also, the other thing that's kind of a pain in the butt with the input is that it's actually quite difficult to unit test that. So I think I'd rather, if I was going to take an input, I'd rather take it as a signal from a service than um, as a um, as an input until that whatever that gets resolved. They were saying they thought it might get resolved. This whole where you have to create like a a fake component and bring it in, and then that's the only, and then you can't change the value for your for it and all that. They said, I think they said they were gonna that might be fixed in Angular 20, which I guess is feature complete at this point, and they're saying that they're going to actually release it in about a month, and they're done. They're on feature freeze at this point. So that's that. Anyways, I think it's kind of weird. It looks so professional at this point to me with the three dots there. I don't know. I'm kind of surprised that makes such a big difference. But yeah, so once we get the sort of the communication going, we'll probably then once that's worked, then just get rid of all these and make it to where you can only you only see these if they're if you've hit the button and created one, and then when you're in there, we have to figure out how to wire it up and get it all working to where you can delete it, and that you could do all that with the tabbing. And there's all kinds of very interesting timing issues that appear from when you try to do that, because like let's say you're like you can actually get there, like if you're tabbing really fast, I think you can get it to where, let's say you have like none, like you can't tab into a focus onto something that isn't visible. So if it goes from none or visibility equals hidden to not hidden or something like that, and you try to tab, you might be able to get through before it actually exists. So so that's kind of a thing. There's just all kinds of funny, weird issues to deal with when you're dealing with tabbing and stuff. Anyways, that is that. Happy coding, everybody. I hope everyone has a wonderful Monday. Bye.